At this point, to say that people have not been enjoying the brand new HBO Max animated show Velma would be an extreme understatement. Most people have probably heard of the backlash or maybe even watched the show themselves. Velma is a series that felt doomed from the start, as the first introduction we got for the Scooby-Doo spin-off was the titled character immediately going after fans. Now, some have argued that they did this in order to get ahead of the inevitable trolling that was bound to happen due to the race swapping. And although there might lay some truth to that, ultimately it was the writing that ended up being the final nail in the coffin. Since the show's release, there has been many back and forth debate about exactly what went wrong, and most critics and fans seem to agree that the series fell flat due to the complete deviation from the original Scooby-Doo show. Velma is supposed to be not only a spin-off show but also a prequel. It is presented as an almost origin story for the main show, but ultimately as more episodes get released it becomes more clear that Velma has nothing in common with the original other than names. Velma suffers from a very clear problem, and that is the fact that they stripped all the characteristics that made her great in the original away from her. This leaves Velma in this titled spin-off or origin, with nothing in common with the original other than the name. Arguments can be made that a change in character is normal when telling an origin story, and although some of that might be true, if the fundamental characteristics are missing, then you are bound to fail in your mission of telling a good story that fans will enjoy. Some have pushed back over this criticism, dismissing it as online haters getting overly upset over a cartoon with a talking dog. But the irony of that criticism ignores their own investment in other people not liking the show. Ultimately, as much as there has been a back and forth debate, most people seem to have turned on the show, and although HBO Max might be bragging that it is their #1 cartoon hit with extremely high ratings, it is very clear that this high alleged viewership will not last. Whether it is hate watching, curiosity, or a genuine interest in the show, it is unlikely that a strong viewership will maintain when all of the dust has settled. Online conversation is almost unanimously trending in one direction, and unfortunately for the Velma showrunners, it is not great. The Atlantic write in their article, titled, "Velma isn't edgy, it's just mean." In Velma, HBO Max's adult-oriented Scooby-Doo spin-off, familiar faces get involved in all sorts of gritty, R-rated activities. Velma, played by the show's executive producer, Mindy Kaling, and Daphne, played by Constance Wu, sell drugs. Fred gets shot in both legs. Shaggy, known by his birth name, Norville, tries to sell a kidney on the black market. Scenes of gratuitous violence pad almost every episode. Limbs get severed, corpses roll out of trash bins, riots break out in prison, meddling kids getting into wacky mysteries with their dog. This show is adamantly not. And in the months leading up to Velma's debut, the creative team seemed to anticipate backlash to the bold changes they'd made. The creator, Charlie Grandy, argued that the writer's alterations, including excising Scooby from the gang, reimagining Velma as a misanthropic South Asian teenager, and incorporating grotesque gags, felt authentic to the spirit of the original series. "We wanted to be respectful," he explained. "We didn't want to just kind of take these beloved characters and put them in outrageous or gross situations and say, 'Isn't it crazy you did that to Velma?'" The showrunner stating that they felt like changing every single aspect of the show was honoring the original must be some sort of sick joke. While I personally do not mind when a showrunner race swap or sex swap a character or even tell a story that does not fit in with the original, I do care about good storytelling. The quote, "We wanted to be respectful," seems like some sort of practical joke, as it is clear that they were trying to be provocative from the start. In the very first promo of the show, you immediately went after the fans. That does not feel very respectful. The show changed every single aspect of the show and completely changed up all aspects of the original in such a way that all the main characters are completely unrecognizable. The leader and the founder of the gang, Fred, is reduced to a complete joke in this show. Nothing about Shaggy is true to his character, and honestly, I do not even know where to begin with Daphne and Velma. The showrunners have a very funny way of showing their respect. If this is how you show love and respect for a classic series, what happens when you don't like a show? For most people, it is very clear what they were trying to do here. They wanted to create a show but knew no one would watch it, so they decided to take a classic IP and attach their poor writing to it. They pushed out a show knowing that it would get backlash, and when that inevitably happened, they turned around and called everyone who did not like it a bunch of bad names. That is the respect that they have for the original work. The truth is that the new episodes are also not really doing any better than the last two. Episodes are being released in pairs every week, and some were holding out hope that things would get better with the latest pair of episodes, but sadly that was not the case, as the newer episodes are being dragged even worse. I covered this part last week as well, but Forbes in their review of the show wrote, "Last week, Velma was trending after launch mainly for how bad it was, which resulted in proxy trends as everyone tried to understand what Mindy Kaling was thinking with the series. But while Kaling is the face and voice of the series, she has not written or directed any of the episodes, including the 2 new ones today. WB bragged that Velma was the biggest HBO Max premiere for an animated series ever. That means, effectively nothing, given that HBO Max recently killed off most of their animated originals because no one was allegedly watching them. And the only other Max original animated series that comes to mind is Harley Quinn, which technically premiered on DC Universe back when that was its own streaming service. So yes, there's some amount of spin going on here. After 2 more episodes, nothing has changed my mind about this being an ill-conceived idea, though I don't think it's a right-wing psyop to make liberals look bad. I think it's just normal bad. Now, again, it should be noted that not everyone agrees that the show is actually that bad. Most of the people pushing back, of course, all use the same talking points, stating it is just people who do not like diversity who criticize the show, but once again, if you look at the majority of the pushback, most people are just disappointed in the bad writing and complete lack of respect for the original characters. Be that as it may, our magazine does defend the show by saying, unfortunately, most of the hate being aimed at the show isn't just a huge overreaction to a fairly good show with a lot of potential, but it's also led by an angry mob of online trolls who haven't watched the show and wouldn't give it a fair shake if they did. At the time of writing, Velma has an absurd 6% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 1.4 out of 10 star rating on IMDb. Some viewers are calling it one of the worst shows they've ever seen. Those viewers are not telling the truth, and most of them have only seen the first 2 episodes, not the entire series. It's not just the faith that's bad in these criticisms, it's the rationality, logic, and the basic media literacy. Velma is a good show. Many of the critics themselves are being racist. The show was created by a white man named Charlie Grandy, but all of the hate is being levied at Mindy Kaling, the woman of color who executive produces and stars. Some haters online have also begun calling the lead character Black Velma because they didn't watch the show before they judged and reviewed it and are racist enough to not know the difference between black people and South Asian people. So once again, it is pretty much what you expect. Again, I would agree that there are some people who have a problem with a more diverse cast, and I am not in support of that. This is my own personal opinion, but something that I believe in, and that is the fact that diversity is good and important. I will always be in support of it. I do not even mind a race swap or a sex swap. If I think about what makes a show good, the skin color of a character is not even on the list. If the show is good and the storytelling grabs my attention, I do not care. However, when it comes to shows like Velma, oftentimes they do these type of race swapping, and it might even be in a very well-intended manner. But the people who end up doing this also are the same people who just suck at writing, so the shows end up horrible and just hurt the people they tried to represent. Those same showrunners then turn around and instead of taking accountability for the bad writing, instead turn on the fans and just call them a bunch of bad names. This then just causes more division. The simple truth is that Velma is not a good show. Most people agree with this point. One look at the reviews will tell you that the hate for the show comes from the writing and not the diverse cast. A small minority of people might have a problem with diversity, but for most, they can do without the penis jokes.